Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, divorce support for dads, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I'm your host. I created this podcast in the Divorced Advocate community as a result of my own high conflict divorce, and because you as a dad deserve all the resources necessary to thrive through this challenging time. I encourage you to check out our website at thedivorcedadvocate.com, where there are resources that correspond to this episode, as well as free access to our membership community, where you will find live meetings, free workshops and courses, private discussion groups, and more. And now, on to this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. We have an incredibly important topic that we're going to be talking about today, and an expert that is going to shed some important light around that. But before we jump in, I just wanted to welcome our new members to the Divorced Advocate community. As usual, man, it's been a really big couple of weeks with new members. We've got guys pouring in and getting involved in the community. Adam, Paul, Tim, Phil, Brett, Peter, welcome to the community. If you're not part of the Divorced Advocate community yet, check it out at thedivorcedadvocate.com. All kinds of resources wherever you're at in this divorce process, and whatever you might need, we've got a resource for you. So get the support that you need and deserve there. Also, a reminder about the Foundation for Fathers. You're going to hear a mid-roll today and ongoing on the podcast. In the Foundation for Fathers, our new nonprofit 501c3 that supports dads in need. If you know a business that takes credit cards, get them in touch with us. They can help fund this nonprofit ongoing. So just a reminder on that, and you can check it out under the tab Support Dads at thedivorcedadvocate.com. Okay, my guest today, Charlie McCready, is a seasoned coach who helps parents and children navigate the painful reality of parental alienation. He speaks from personal experience, having endured the alienation of his own children through long stretches of limited or no contact before ultimately rebuilding those relationships. With over 20 years of firsthand and professional experience, Charlie offers practical, real-world guidance drawn from working with a diverse range of parents facing similar challenges. Charlie, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jude. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'm delighted to be of assistance for you and your fantastic group.
Yes. So we were chatting a little bit offline, and I know the dads that are tuning into this now are probably very, very interested in hearing what you have to say. If it is not the top issue that I have dads come to me or that we have conversation around in our group meetings or in individual coaching, it is one of the top 2 or 3 issues that we deal with. And so, like I was mentioning, this is something also dear to my heart in that I experienced this as a child growing up as well. And I can empathize with and relate to the challenges of dealing with this from both sides of the coin. So I'm really curious to start our conversation, but why don't you just start with sharing how and why this is such a heavy topic and difficult topic to deal with. Why and how did you get involved in this?
Not by choice. It's the simple answer. Yeah, so I guess I was like so many of the people who'll be listening to this podcast, which was I went through a period of what I call pre-alienation, which is a kind of foundation building phase that my ex was going through. That was going on for about a decade, and I was unaware of it. I was unaware of parental alienation, full stop. It was only really at the point in time that I separated from my ex that I saw this rapid change in the behaviors from my children. They really didn't want to see me. Getting time at all with them was incredibly difficult. Their respect and behavioral patterns were changing enormously. And I suddenly found myself in this world where I was kind of locked out from a relationship with them. Getting any information about what was going on in their lives was really hard. And I had a period of 5 years of what I can best describe as severely alienated. Two kids involved. One of them was more affected than the other. So I had like two different experiences. With the older child, she was 16 when this began. She went off to uni at the age of 18. That gave me the opportunity to start rebuilding a relationship because I did all the right things, as it turned out, pretty much for the 2 years before she went off to uni. We'll cover some of what those things you should do are during this conversation, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
However, my younger child, that was much harder because she was then left alone in the house with a mother who was still furious at me, venting off. I was the vilified scapegoat.
Mm-hmm.
And for her, it was harder to rebuild our relationship. In fact, I consciously and voluntarily went 2 years no contact with her because it was the only way of maintaining the relationship. Yeah, now that's a real tough gig for any dad.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to be 2 years. All I knew is that every single time I met her, our relationship was deteriorating. So I thought, let's just draw a line in the sand, take a break from each other, and then when she's ready, let's try and rebuild from that low point we got to without it getting any worse. So I'm glad to say that I've rebuilt relationships with both of my kids. It's taken quite some time. I mean, I say 5 years of severe alienation, 2 years no contact. It's probably taken another couple of years to rebuild the relationship with my younger child. Took a couple of years to build it with my older one as well. But I'm now 15 years in, and I'd have to say, for any parent who's out there thinking this is a short-term thing, it ain't. You have to get ready for that. My ex still hates me with a passion. It's not me, and it's not you, and it's not anybody else who's listening to this. It's the people who are alienated who've got the problems. But she still hates me with a passion, and there are still some residual scars with the kids. So generally, we're 80 to 90% fixed, but the 10 to 20% just bubbles up once in a while. So it's something we have to continue supporting and nurturing our children with over, a very long period of time.
Right. And so having experienced it myself, I can say that even in my adult life, and now there are things that come up that are residual things that I may have thought I've dealt with or that I didn't know that I needed to deal with, oftentimes within the context of relationships, right? Maybe relationships with my kids now, but also in romantic relationships too, because it really, really does a number on a child who is impressionable. That's, neural pathways are building and forming at that time of life. It's impressionable. It's a difficult, challenging time, particularly like it sounds like your daughters were teens going through this and at that time
14 and 16.
Yeah. And so it's terrible and it's difficult. So a couple things.
We get blindsided as well. So I would expect all the dads out there, and there are also mums who get alienated as well, but everybody who gets alienated to just be in a bit of an emotional mess. And so this stuff permeates every aspect of your life. You find it difficult to work, to socialize, to relax, because you're just in this state of very high stress. And that's part of what I think we should talk about as well, is how do you help parents to kind of get back into a more normalized state? Because you can't help your kids when you're in this kind of side-blinded state yourself.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Jude with a quick reminder about the Divorced Advocate Foundation for Fathers, which is our nonprofit that helps dads through divorce with legal education, free or reduced cost coaching, and mental health resources. If you own a business or know someone who does, there's an easy way to help by connecting credit card processing through our partner program. Part of the fees go straight to the foundation with no added cost to the business, and 98% of businesses are actually able to save money on their processing fees. It's a win-win. So if you know a business that accepts credit cards, get them in touch with me by sending a warm introduction email to jude@thedivorcedadvocate.com or give me a call directly at 720-255-1021. Right. That's a great point, because we were mentioning, and and you experience it, I experience it. The dads that come to me that are at the end of their rope, ready to end things. It's usually around having an issue with alienation, or not seeing their kids and not being able to be a parent and have involvement with them. That is really the last straw that can break the camel's back. So for me, this is a health crisis. Dads are already 9 times more prone to suicide, and so with these issues that bring it to this, this is one of them, we really need to start shedding a light and providing some support, which is what we're going to try to do today. So you mentioned pre-alienation, which I thought was interesting, because I'd never heard that, but it's something that we do talk about often. And so when you mentioned I was being pre-alienated, were you talking about things that were happening during your marriage and the relationship that you had with your ex, and then just the family dynamic? And if so, kind of walk us through what some of those examples and things to look out for, or look back if you're in the middle of a divorce, of what pre-alienation might be.
Absolutely. Because it's one of those things that, so I kind of coined the term just for the parents that I help and coach, because it kind of gives them a framework to work with. It's basically your ex beginning to set down these foundations that somehow you're a bad person. So it might be saying that, you're a bad dad, you don't care about them, you're mean with money, you're mean with your time, you shouldn't be listened to, you're a bit of an idiot. They'll find various ways of starting to put you down, such that the children are building up a negative narrative about you. And this stuff can be very, very subtle. It can be. It doesn't have to be very obvious, but it can be a little denigrating comment about you, in front of the kids. Or, oh no, you don't listen to your dad. Just do what your mum says. You'll be all right.
Or undermining. I was going to say.
Undermining, yeah. And a lot of this will, goes on potentially behind your back. So we'll see little signs of it, but, most of us just put it down to, well, my ex is a bit difficult, or she's just like that, nothing will come of it. But actually what's going on is this kind of foundational kind of rewriting of who is the important parent, who's the parent to be trusted, who's the person that you should feel potentially a little bit unsafe with. And, even some false allegations start coming up. And very often it's the alienator who's doing the bad stuff then claims that it's us doing the bad stuff,
Exactly. Yeah. And that's when it becomes, it becomes, at least blatant to those of us that were blind to the fact that this was happening prior, but that then becomes it. What I've found is that it's incremental, right? Like it might start during the marriage, like you described, with some of these subtle things that you're talking about. And we kind of, for the sake, at least this is my experience and experience with lots of guys I talk to, for the sake of keeping things going smoothly, it doesn't get addressed. There's probably other issues that are going on in the relationship that are making things difficult and challenging. Those might be the ones that are getting the focus and the attention, and these other small slights, like you said, they could be just slights, right? Something as simple as like a backhanded comment in the space of the kids, right? Maybe not even directly with the kids there, but within earshot where they can hear, or disregarding or ignoring and stuff, like when the kids are around, so that they kind of see this dynamic that starts to happen. And then it's not a conscious thing for them, right? Which I think we're going to get into here in a little bit about the.
I don't think at that point that they're planning to alienate the kids, but
right.
But a lot of the people that we're dealing with, it is a mental health crisis, and the people that are prone to alienation do have mental disorders, and the word narcissism is bandied around a lot, but that is a mental disorder. But I also think it's really important for everybody to understand that there are catalysts that often have a massive impact on the acceleration of alienation. So sometimes you might get to the point of separating, and everything is okay for a while, but then some dynamic changes after a period of time. So the big five that I always look for and warn people about, the first one is when you do separate, because generally at that point in time, the narcissists have kind of decided, or the alienators have decided, that we're no longer important in their lives. They don't need to butter us up to keep us happy about anything. The gloves come off, and now's the time to go for the kids. I'm just going to take a backward step for 1 second. I'm going to use this word safety quite a lot, because a person becomes narcissistic because they no longer feel safe in the world around them.
Mm-hmm.
And they adopt coping mechanisms to deal with things that are classically traumatic events that have happened to them in the past. So they become very controlling, very manipulative, very coercive. So when things happen that make them feel unsafe, they're going to react. I'll just add something that the alienated parents will relate to as well. Most of us are empaths. So we're fixers, we're kind-hearted people. I'm going to go so far as to say we're people pleasers. We're too nice.
Yeah, and sometimes codependent.
Yeah, and our coping mechanisms to keep ourselves safe is keeping everybody else happy. When you start looking at narcissists, and I don't want to put all the blame on them, because it's like we need to understand them, but we also need to understand ourselves. We're both trying to keep ourselves safe. The kids' behaviors, which we'll come to, those are coping mechanisms as well. That's the kids keeping themselves safe. So if you want to really understand what's going on, just think, is this person feeling safe or not? So that comes back to the 5 triggers. So at separation, the alienator is thinking, okay, I'm feeling really unsafe because I now need to go off and kind of create this whole new life for myself. There's a lot of uncertainty. So their go-to response in a lot of instances is to take out their frustrations and their fears on the kids by elevating or increasing the alienation. The second one, court, anything to do with courts, even the threat of court, because this is something that they can't control in the way that they seek to. Other aspects of their life. Again, it makes them feel unsafe. And so they increase the alienation as a mechanism of hurting you for putting them through pain. The third one, money. So generally speaking, we as empaths, we get a lot of our kind of the important things in life for us tend to revolve around relationships. For them, it tends to be around, the home, the finance. Can I have physical things that I don't have to interact with? They're not like relationships, that I have control over them. So anything to do with money. Fourth one, your relationship with your kids. So when they're trying to stop you from having the relationship and you somehow succeed either through the court or by using some of the techniques that you can use, start having a better relationship with your child, this will go against what the alienator is trying to do. So again, they'll increase the alienation. So it's like, for us, we experience 1 step forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 1 step back. And then the fifth one, which you touched at the beginning, is new partnerships. So in the case of the men here, the mothers, there's a couple of issues they have. One, they don't want you to be happy. 2, they don't want to be with you, but they don't want anybody else to be with you because then you might be happy. But the third one, which is the big one, is they don't want another mother figure coming in and being an influence over the kids. So when you experience, so most people will go through separation, divorce, which often entails court and money. And so early on in that kind of period, there's a lot of upheaval and unrest. Mm-hmm. And it's normally the worst time for the alienators. So that's, by extension, the worst time for the kids. But just being able to, I would encourage everybody to think about, is it worthwhile taking my ex to court? Because you're going to create all sorts of problems by doing so. should I be, letting my children know about new partners, although we're trying to recreate new lives? And I would say to most people, kind of try and keep those things separate, depending on your circumstances. Obviously, I'm being a bit generic here, but generally try to keep those things separate. And just be aware that when you do start having a better relationship with your kids, your ex is going to try and, upset that and create road bumps for you.
Right. So that's very interesting because of the fact that I would be inclined to say that most of the divorce cases that end up going to trial involve one or the other person having some sort of mental emotional issue or personality disorder, because the majority of healthy functioning adults that are in a relationship that just isn't working anymore can come to agreement and terms and figure things out on how to separate and keep the kids' best interests at the forefront of that process. But when you've got, it only takes one person to have these issues, to have to be forced to go to trial and to deal with this stuff. So it's almost like a catch-22 in what you're describing, because if you have to do that, and we talk about making sure that you're taking care of yourself and structuring things that are in the best interest of being able to be the best dad that you can be going forward, so that you can support your kids and have a life and hopefully maybe have another romantic relationship and successful relationship that will be a positive for your kids. But if you're doing that, then you're actually triggering and setting off this whole firestorm of issues with somebody that's got some mental emotional challenges going on. So it almost becomes like where you got to make a choice of, do you stay in this relational dynamic that you've had this whole time dealing with this person with the mental emotional issues, and if you do, then you kind of perpetuate that post divorce, which is probably, it's not really healthy. Or do you start to do the work on yourself, make the changes that you need? And sometimes that's starting to say no, setting boundaries, and then if it requires going to court and having to do that. So like, how do you sort through that and make that decision if you navigate that and know what's best and what's not? Because I've seen it both ways, and I've actually heard the argument you brought up, the fact that you went no contact for a couple of years, and I've had the conversations with others who say, well, this is probably the best thing that you should do, because it reduces the conflict, and that therefore helps your kids to not have to be in the middle of a firestorm of fighting. But my argument to that is, well, this is abuse, and what they're doing is abusive. And in any other abusive situation, we would never be just handing over our children to an abuser, to physically or any other way. So
this is one of the challenges, because a lot of alienation is counterintuitive, and it's really hard for us to get our heads around this. Generally speaking, I would advocate that that parents try to maintain contact with their kids, even when their kids are being really difficult. Yes. Stick in there, because when you do go no contact, it can be very difficult to reestablish that relationship. And very often you can be highly reliant upon the kid to be the person that reaches out to you. Whereas at least when, so what I did was extreme, because I didn't have much of an option. But for the parents who are in a position, and this is where I should say, we're talking generically, everybody needs to consider that they're in a unique situation. We as a dad is unique. Each of our children is unique. The mother or the other alienating parent is unique. The other people, all the dynamics are unique. So do go, I would encourage most people to consider getting help and support, because going through all the books and the resources and everything else will give you lots of generic stuff, but it won't pull all the pieces together for you, and it won't tailor it for you. So, the advice on should I go contact or no contact will depend on your particular situation. But there are some sort of general things that people can take into consideration. Can I can I give you something that might help in terms of how do you navigate this stuff?
Yeah. Because, well, actually, before we talk about navigating it, can we talk then about the next step? Because we talked about the pre-alienation, right? But let's talk about the signs, because this is what I get a lot of times with guys that come in, and then they well, my son or daughter just doesn't want, they don't want to come over, so I just let them stay at their mom's for whatever amount of time. And then, what are some of these signs then that you need to be paying attention to, that then this is really starting to escalate to that next point? And then let's tie in like what you can do to mitigate those at those different levels.
So classically, I would expect kids to start doing things like being rude to the parent. So being a little bit belligerent, backhanded comments, basically feeling a sense of empowerment. So they might start saying, "Oh, I don't need to follow your boundaries," or "Mum says I can do this." I'm going to try and stick away from saying "mum" too much, because I say it's kind of gender neutral. But they kind of say the alienating parent is saying, "Oh, I can do this or I can do that." The alienating parent will also give the kids choice, the power of choice, but it's a false choice. So they'll say to the kid, "Well, you can decide if you see your dad this weekend or not."
Right.
But really,
that's the number one that I hear, right? Is that, oh, well, they're old enough to make their own decision, which, not even at 20 are they old enough to make that decision, because they don't even understand the benefits of being with their father and what what those things bring, right?
And you'll hear from the alienating parent, "I can't force them."
Yes.
But also what you might notice is there is this thing called adultification or parentification, where the alienating parent is, showing the kid lots of court documentation, sharing private information about you, sharing financial information. So again, if you hear your kids talking about any of those things, that's normally a sign they're being alienated. But as part of that process, children then start seeing themselves as being more of a peer to you, rather than as, this is where the parent-child relationship starts breaking down. This is where they start having issues with your boundaries. You might also notice that they stop sharing private information with you. So they'd stop telling you about what's going on in their lives. They won't talk about what's going on in the alienated parent's home. They'll stop. They might start calling you by your first name as opposed to, you're calling you dad or mum. They can stop giving you physical attention like hugs. They might stop saying "I love you." But you can generally see kind of there's this change and this shift in your child where they're essentially beginning to reject you.
Right.
It can be quite difficult detecting alienation when you've got teenage kids.
I was just going to say that. How is that? Yeah. Can we differentiate that? Because sometimes this is a natural process with teens pulling away, exerting their freedom, etc. But where it gets really convoluted.
So in those sorts of instances, I would look for what they call signs of enmeshment. So this is, are they strongly favoring the other parent? Are they parroting what the other parent says? Are they holding the other parent's views of you? Are they pushing your boundaries too far? Are they reluctant to see you? Because those are all signs. Teenagers, they think all parents are idiots when they get to that point, but they'll generally see both idiots. That they're happy to have a relationship with both of them in normal circumstances.
That's a really good point, I think, right there. And I want to stop and point that out is teenagers in even in the most like healthy, functional 2-parent households, they're going to think that both parents are stupid, right? They're going to be pushing back against the system, if you will, or the family or whatever. It's not going to be one parent or the other is stupid, unless there's alienation going on within. But I'm talking about like a healthy family dynamic. So I think that's a really, really good point to look out, and for those dads that are listening, and that they can differentiate if it is really specific. If they're not doing the same thing with mom that they're doing with you, then that's probably a sign.
And also, an alienated child doesn't want to talk to you about the problem of alienation. So when you try and confront them and say, well, why won't you come and see me? You'll get things that they won't be able to answer. So they'll say stuff like, I'm busy, it's complicated, or they'll just try and avoid the subject, because basically they're being put in a loyalty conflict between the alienating parent and us. And they don't want to be in that position. So when we try to have the conversation with them, you're holding them in this impossible position where they can't say anything negative about the alienating parent. So it sounds weird. Again, this is counterintuitive, but having conversations with your kid about alienation generally pushes them away from you.
Okay,
so this
interesting.
Is this catch-22 situation again.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to court to try and get your kid, it can turn against you. If you try and have conversations with your kid about alienation, it can turn against you. So you have to handle things very subtly.
Well, and so maybe the conversation, and so I'm going to share kind of the experience that I had and what I did. And I feel like I unwittingly was able to mitigate a lot of this. And how I did it is when you were describing all the things that I experienced, right? Like they talk about your finances and what you did, what was wrong and this, and I would get my daughters coming to you. Now, my daughters were much younger, and I'm sure, and I think we need to differentiate. The conversations can be different or should be different at different age levels, but they were younger, but they would. Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. That's a huge thing, which let me just comment on that too, which is something I say all the time. Like when you hire a coach to go to like a physical fitness coach, maybe to go help you get in a healthier lifestyle or get in better shape, like the plan that they make for every person is different, right? Because every person has different goals, different bodies, different abilities, like all of that. That's the same if you come to a parental alienation coach, a divorce coach, etc. And that's why it's incredibly important that you do get that help, because like you said, if you're reading books or you're getting your information on the internet or whatever, it's all general. Right? Like you're going to hear a billion things about narcissism, right? And a billion, false things about what that really is and what that entails. So get a coach so that they can help you be specific and tailor what you need to do to your specific situation. That's the same with attorneys and everything else. But so I think that was a terrific point. But back to those conversations. And so what I always did is, like, if they come and say, mom said you stole all of her money. Mom said you took her car, that you stole the house, that, like, all these different things that they come up with. I would sit down and I'd say, man, I'm really sorry that your mom's having these conversations with you. They're adult conversations that we probably shouldn't be having, but that's not true. In fact, true. And if you want to know any more information about it, I'm happy to share with you. And usually, for the most part, they'd be like, no, because they were too young to understand, how you decide who gets the house in court and what the statutes are within whatever jurisdiction. Like, and I'm not going to have that conversation with them anyway. But usually that was enough to make them say, I was setting a boundary saying, no, that's not true. Well, number one, I'm saying that they shouldn't have that conversation, right? And I was pointing out the behavior in my ex and not denigrating her, not talking bad about her, just talking about the specific behavior of her having an adult conversation with the child, and that was wrong, right? So I think it's important. I felt that it was important to identify the behavior of what was happening and let them know that I did not feel that was an appropriate behavior to be happening. And then you just open up the conversation, the opportunity for them to be able to communicate. I appreciated that they brought that stuff to me. Sometimes it was just a question. Sometimes it was like you described, like, like a prod or a poke or something that was rude. And that was not in that's not their nature, right? Like, because I knew them well enough. And then that would open up the conversation. So was that the right way to go about it, at least at that age?
In some cases.
Okay. All right. Well, tell me. Yeah.
Again, so this is a really good example of just how dynamic this is. So if you can imagine a spectrum of, in fact, there are three spectrums. There's one for the alienator, one for us as parents, and one for the kids. For the kids, it's mildly alienated through to severely. So mild, moderately, severely. Mild is where they're kind of a little bit impacted. They're feeling under a bit of pressure, but it's fairly manageable. So those are the sorts of situations where having a conversation along the lines that you're talking about with your kid will work quite well because they're kind of relatively open-minded. Where you have a child who's in the severely alienated space, they're completely enmeshed with that parent, and they go through kind of trauma within themselves. If anything, if they're challenged on that parent's perspective, or if you challenge them to have a conversation to say, look, that's simply not true, they will back away from you, and they will not engage in that conversation.
Okay.
So you have to kind of know where you are on the where they are on the spectrum, as to what sorts of conversations you can have with them.
So then, what do you do then with that severe, with that child that's being severely alienated? Because I can relate to that, because that was my childhood, right? Like I was completely enmeshed with my mom. So you're exactly right. Any conversation outside of what her opinion was like very difficult for me to engage in.
Yeah. So maybe if we can use you as an example, because I think that's always really good, and we'll kind of use you as the guinea pig. Mm-hmm. The way that I encourage parents to rebuild relationships with severely alienated kids is to first of all, put yourself entirely into that child's position. So recognize that they're in a traumatized space, that the things that they're doing are coping mechanisms. It's not about you as the alienated parent. It's the child has come to see this way and they believe it. It is their experience. And one of the hardest things that we need to do, and I've had to do this personally, is you as an alienated child need to be able to tell your alienated parent what you have been through. If you might not even wish to discuss your experience of alienation, but you need to kind of start developing a sense of trust with with the parent who is alienated, because trust has broken down. You no longer feel safe with that person. Very often the kids, because it's been drummed into their head so much that, being with that person is going to result in trouble with the alienating parent, it's like this subconscious program that starts to run in the background. So even when things have calmed down and you feel a little bit more independent, just reaching out and being with the alienated parent again can make you feel uncomfortable, which you won't understand why, but it's this safety thing again. It's because if I go and see dad, mum's going to get angry. So I have to tread really carefully here. And then you're thinking, but where's dad at? Is dad in a healed place that he's not going to give me a hard time? He's not going to be angry with me. I don't want him talking about all this stuff from the past. It's kind of, he needs to meet me where I am at the moment. And that can be hard for an alienated parent, because a lot of the time we've got this whole injustice thing going. Yeah. We want to correct the record. And I say to people all the time, you've got a choice. Typically, either you try to correct the record or you choose to have a relationship with your kid. I would opt for a relationship with the kid. So with the alienated parent needs to give that child an opportunity to get comfortable with them again. And the only way you can really do that is through love, support, compassion. And you have to endure the child telling you about their experience when you know it's not true. They're going to tell you stuff about how they perceive you. You know it's not true, but until they get the opportunity to tell you, they can't trust you. Because if they say, but Dad, you were really mean when you were young, or you were really mean to me. If you defend yourself, first of all, that's the same as criticizing the alienator. But also, if you defend yourself, you're basically saying, I'm not feeling safe as a parent because I can't rise above what I'm hearing and just accept this is my son or my daughter's experience, because that's all that's going on. They're just sharing their experience.
Right. Well, and it's not, and we almost have to look at it like they're brainwashed, right? It's not, and it's not actually their experience. It's what they're told their experience was. And probably
Totally.
they don't even remember what it is that they're recalling or being, because it's just what they were told, and they're just repeating what they've been told. So it's not even any kind of true reality, right?
It's not that the kid needs to have an opportunity. I mean, a lot of the time the kids won't talk about the vast majority of what went on with alienation, but they feel a need to talk about some degree just to clear the air and kind of move past, move into new territory with you. So those things that they do decide to share, which is them seeking to rebuild this trust of you, you just have to go along with their story.
Got it.
At least in the initial stages, you can slowly correct them over a period of time, but they need to feel comfortable with us in the first instance. Once they do, then you can slowly start trying to, and it's not so much a case of correcting the story. It's more a case of trying to help readjust their values and their standards and the way that they conduct themselves, because that's more important. Because these kids end up with these very strange, that they have distorted perspectives.
Right. Well, and I want to make a comment on that, because having been alienated, it's not even that you will correct the story. It was, and at least this was for me and lots of other alienated kids that I've talked to, and adults now that were alienated kids that I've talked to, is that over a period of time in your growth and in your own healing, you look back and are able to correct the story yourself, knowing what you've learned and having gone through the healing process that you've gone through, and then it's righted, if you will, or at least. But that's hard as a parent, like going through that and waiting for that process. So what I'm hearing you say is, if you can just handle your emotions, keep your emotions, whatever, if that's fear or sadness or outrage and anger at this whole process, if you just keep that in check and allow them during this process to get out whatever they got to get out, and understand that they're literally maybe like look at them as like a puppet, right? Like they're not even, it's not even them. They're just like they're just parroting something that's been brainwashed in them. Let that go. And our goal then is to start that process of supporting them, helping them to heal and grow, getting in touch with the values, your values, their values, that then will allow this process then for them to rewire their neural pathways and understand better ways to relate and do all that stuff that we're just going to be starting to help them through that process. And then eventually the healing will happen. Because
nobody could fix, your dad couldn't fix you.
No.
As much as he would love to, he couldn't fix you. But when you restored a relationship with him, that then enabled you to fix yourself, because you're the only person who can fix you. But it put you in a position that you felt safe enough to then kind of explore your healing.
Yep, exactly.
And until you feel safe to explore your healing, you're not going to heal. Can I just go into the parent stuff? Because that is at the very heart of this. Because a lot of parents out there are going to be feeling really, really powerless about everything that's going on. You're a lot more powerful than you think you are. And one area where you have an enormous amount of control is over yourself. And you have to heal yourself. Now, this is counterintuitive again, because we all think, no, I need to focus on going to court. I need to focus on fixing the kids. I need to focus on, making sure the kids are okay. If you're not in a good space yourself, you can't help the kids. If you're not in a good space, you will go to court more often than necessary. You will make mistakes. So I'm just I'll play through, and it's harder for men to hear this than women, because women are much better talking about their emotions, but men go through the same thing. So there are 9 big emotions.
Okay.
First one's grief, where you don't have contact with your kids. Second one is guilt, because you feel, have I done enough? Should I have done enough? Am I doing enough? And we're empaths, so we're really self-critical anyway, and we're beating ourselves up. The third one is shame, because the people around us are criticizing us for not having our children in our life or for having such bad relationships. But that's because they don't understand alienation. They've got no, so they're using a reference point of a normal family, which leads to the fourth one, which is isolation, because your family don't get it, your friends don't get it, nobody gets this stuff. You feel all by yourself. It's like, how is this happening? What is this stuff? The fifth one is powerlessness, because whatever we seem to do is turned against us. If we buy the kid a present, it's like your dad's trying to bribe you. If you don't buy the kid a present, your dad's abandoned you.
Right.
Whatever the instance is, it'll be turned against you. Injustice. So the fact that the lawyers don't get it, the psychologists don't get it, the courts don't get it, CPS doesn't get it, DCF, all these players, nobody gets it. So it's like, how can this be going on? But injustice is also about you as a parent thinking, I'm being rejected and my kid doesn't understand who I am. We get very precious about ourselves. Then there's anger, self-explanatory. Then there's anxiety, which is a massive one, because we create all these scenarios in our head of what if this is happening? What if that's happening? What if the other is happening? What men in particular don't realize is when you create any one of these what if scenarios in your head, you go through the emotional experience as if it was real.
Right.
Every time you come up with something, you're just traumatizing yourself. And the last one is fear, which is kind of a fuel for the other eight. And if you can imagine a marathon race, so basically our X runs the first 100 yards and they say, here's a baton, there you go, this is yours. And we go, thank you very much, and we grab it. What we're grabbing is a conversation in our head, which is looping. And the conversation is grief, guilt, fear, isolation, anxiety, injustice.
Mm-hmm.
Once this conversation starts in your head, basically you're going to give anything that's in your mind into your subconscious. And your subconscious it's a problem processor. It's got no filters, and it'll say, whatever it is you want me to work on it, I'll work on it. So it'll say, Jude, you want me to work on grief, guilt, isolation, fear. Give me a couple of hours, I'll get back to you.
Right.
And it does. So now it's permeating your dreams. It'll wake you up at night. You're trying to do your job. All you think about is grief, guilt, fear, anxiety. You can't go out and spend time socially. Like literally every moment of your life is spent with these thoughts going around in your head. So you have to very consciously stop this conversation from happening. But it's deeper than that, because all these things, the grief, the guilt, the injustice, they're words we understand, but they're common words, but it's unique experiences again. So it's your version of grief. It's your version of injustice. It's your version of, isolation. And most of these things have their root causes in our past insecurities and vulnerabilities. So basically, these are our insecurities and vulnerabilities with a big looping conversation going on. So we have to identify what these things are so we can shut the conversation down. And then you want to switch the conversation to, where do I actually want to go? And the where I want to go is, who is the version of me I want to be for me? Because I'm in a mess, so I need to sort myself out. What's my life going to start looking like going forwards? Because you need to sort that out as well. Who's the version of me I need to be for each of my kids? Because each of your children are having different experiences. You can't be the same dad to 2 or 3 different kids. You have to be a different version of you for each of them, according to what they need from you. So there's a lot of stuff over here to focus your mind on.
Man, yeah, that's a lot, right?
That is a lot, taking your attention off this. So I'm just going to give an example of how do you identify what these things are. So triggers. If anything is triggering you, it's an insecurity. So a trigger might be, my kid's being rude to me. Or a trigger might be, I'm not seeing my kids. Or I might see other people with their children out in the public. That triggers me. Basically, every single one of those things is telling you something inside of you needs to be healed. So I'm just going to put some of this back into the context, because I think it's really useful using examples. We're empaths, most of us. We're empaths because somebody, typically our parents, didn't give us the love and support and care that we deserved as kids. So we learned this coping mechanism from them, which is, I have to make sure you're happy in order you then look after me.
Mm-hmm.
And then we adopt that as our modus operandi. we go out into the big wide world and we become people pleasers. We're just too nice. We don't have good boundaries. When it comes to relationships, career will be a completely different person. We'll be a lot more confident, but relationships, we tend to be kind of way too nice. Then you go into your marriage. So you're now with a narcissist and you use your coping mechanisms with them, which is all about being nice. Of course, that doesn't work. So we're kind of defenseless against these people. Then you go forwards again to the point in time your kids are being alienated. And now you're going to re-experience what happened to you as a kid, because your child is now rejecting you. And that makes us feel very insecure because we're empaths, because that's what happened to us as children. Mm-hmm. And all the things that we would normally do, being really nice to the kid, doesn't necessarily work. So we feel that we don't have the skills and the tools to kind of correct this situation. So we have to start learning how to be different within ourselves, because also the kids don't need a parent who's feeling insecure and vulnerable about themselves. Mm-hmm. The kids need a parent who is strong, confident, is showing the child that there is a way through this, there's a way out of this, somebody they can go to who's going to give them the love and the support they need.
Right. Yeah.
So there's lots going on in the kind of the subconscious aspects of this, which everybody out there can fix. You can identify all these things and shut them all down.
Yeah. Sometimes the way I describe divorce is you get broken open, right? Like, and the parental alienation part of that is just another one that exploits a part of that when you're broken open that you're having to deal with and learn about. And I think what we can come to a conclusion about is all of this is meant for you to step back in, because it is so chaotic and so difficult and it's so complex, is to step back and really take a look at yourself and control the only thing that you can during this time, which is yourself, your emotions, how you react, the work that you do to heal yourself, how to show up better, how to create the environment that you need. You touched on taking care of yourself, getting yourself in a position, whether it's a position to go forward and parent and co-parent together, or to deal with alienation, or to deal with a stressful financial situation, whatever it might be, right? Like there's a myriad of things depending on your situation, right? One might be alienation, one might be finances, one might be something else, but all of it is going to be very complex and very stressful in going forward. So focusing in on yourself, which is counterintuitive also to what you describe as empath, like you're using empaths as kind of like codependent people. I think people that gives to get, and
just people who are kind-hearted, nice,
givers, people,
self-reflective.
Which was my case, which I find oftentimes, and with the alienated parents are, it's counterintuitive for them to stop and say, I got to take care of myself. I got to figure this stuff out. I got to take the time to go to therapy. I got to get myself physically fit. I need to be healthy and eating right and getting the sleep and rest that I need, right? Like, and we probably don't have time to go into it, but like I did the same thing. I started to become super dad and almost kill myself because I wanted to do everything. I was up till midnight steaming the girls' uniforms because I wanted to make sure that they looked perfectly good, and would be up first thing making breakfast and lunch and making sure that their hair was done and all. Like it was insane. Yeah. It was the outward focus. Yeah, exactly.
Would say something. So a good way of summarizing it is there are three things you need to do and in no particular order, but exactly as you were saying. As a parent, you need to restore your own mental and emotional resilience, because without that, you can't help your kids and you won't have the strength to take on the alienator. The second one, understand alienation from your child's perspective. Really put yourself into their shoes. There's 18 to 20 things that's like a list of things that affect most children. You can literally walk through the list and say, this is the sort of experience they're either having right now or they might have in the future, because these things are dynamic. But you can kind of work out where your kid is on that spectrum and then say, right, what do I need? How do I need to adapt my parenting style for what my kids needs from me today? And be prepared to keep adapting that style as the situation changes. So that's one, sort yourself out. Two, learn about alienation and become the person your kid needs. And the third one is, you're not going to change the alienator, but we tend to be very reactive to what they do because they're normally ahead of us in terms of the stuff that they do, like going and contacting schools and having us stop from receiving information, or telling all our friends, what a bad guy we are, or telling our families. So we don't think like alienators, and it's very unnatural for us, but we have to. So start thinking like an alienator. Put yourself in their shoes and say, okay, what is that person going to do, today, tomorrow, next week, next month, and 6 months in a year? Go out as far as a year and say, okay, is that person going to try and move my kids out of school to try and hurt me and, break the connection further? Are they going to try and move state? Are they going to try and live somewhere else? Are they going to come chasing after me for money? Are they going to try and take me to court? Are they going to hit me with false allegations? Just like, what's the range of things they're going to try and do to me? And where possible, mitigate some of those, the kind of options and actions that they're likely to take in advance of them coming up with them.
Right.
So it's like they've been playing chess, we've been playing checkers. We now have to learn to play chess as well, but we need to get, like any good chess master, 5 to 7 moves ahead of your opponent so that you can start reducing the impact of the damage.
Exactly. And in the way that I try to and I want to reassure the dads that are listening too, is after a period of time and experiences, you kind of, like if you play chess against somebody enough times, or you play any game, you kind of start to pick up how they're playing the game. You'll start to understand their playbook, and you'll start to be able to do what you're describing, like knowing, okay, this is what's potentially going to come up, or we're changing schools here soon, or they're probably going to be dealing with an issue of this. You're going to start to know, and you're going to start to know the frequency of this. And you can almost, I can almost now be like, hey, it's once a quarter. I know it's going to be something, and what is that's going to be? But I will say, Charlie, that the your points about restoring your own, that number one, that is a huge job in and of itself, right? Like your 3 steps that you need to do. But that's the number one thing, at least for me, that I've seen from my success and other successes. If you are able to restore yourself mentally, emotionally, and be grounded in a good place, that resiliency, once you deal with it a couple of times, unfortunately, it feels like a war, right? And there's all these battles that happen in this grand war, that once you almost become a battle hardened general going through this, and then you kind of know what's going to happen. You're in a good place, and then you can do those other things, like put yourself into the kid's shoes and understand, and then adapt parenting style. That's hard too. Parenting is hard, period. Adapting to different kids and what their different experiences are going through with somebody, and then if they're teens, it's even harder, right? It's just so much. And even in an intact, healthy family dealing with the teens and all that pushback, but you've got the separate households and environments, and somebody that's undermining and doing that so with those 3 steps, I've found that first one, as long as you put yourself on solid foundation, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, you get yourself in a place, then you're able to handle all those, the 9 emotions you talked about. Man, just grief alone has all the different 5 aspects of going through grief. And then like that comes up and that might go away. And you talk about then isolate, like there's so many. So if you can get yourself into a place where you're steady and you're able to deal with all that stuff, that is going to be the biggest thing.
And I would like to give a message of hope.
Okay.
Because for most parents who are going through this right now, it's like you're staring down this bottomless pit of pain. And you think, this, is this ever going to get better? Am I ever going to get through this? And this is why people commit suicide. They really get themselves into such a state that although there's no guarantees with any of this stuff, the majority of people end up reuniting with their kids. Now, they don't do it at the pace they want, but they do end up reuniting with the kids. So you have to keep remembering this is going to go on. The pain's going to go on longer than I want, but I am going to get through this. My kids are going to get through this. So I have to just hold that light in sight at all times, even when it's like at your darkest moments. Just remind yourself, no, I'm going to get through this.
Yeah. That's great. That is absolutely true. I can attest to that myself personally, and get involved in a community of, Charlie's community of people that are going through this, so that you're not isolating yourself and that you do talk to other people. We've got dads that in our group too that have gone through it, that have dealt with it, that have come out better on the back end. So surround yourself, get involved. Find Charlie, where can people connect with you? Your website is terrific. And so at the very least, listeners, go to the website. There are all kinds of resources. You can get yourself what we talked about is just like a drop in the bucket. And we're going to there's so much more. And we're going to do some more. We're going to do some more around this with Charlie and talking about it. Because as you've heard today, it's complex. There's a lot. And we need to be supporting dads going through this. But where can they get a hold of you? What's the best way to do that?
So my website is charliemccready.com. So it's nice and easy. You can also find me on Instagram if you just look up Charlie McCready. If you look up Facebook, I've got a page, Charlie McCready, but I've also got Empowering You to Overcome Parental Alienation Behaviors. So that's a group. So there's kind of 2 different sites there. I've also got some stuff on YouTube, which is progressively building over time. So there's some like Q&A masterclasses. There's some specific points where I talk about exactly this stuff, what parents can do for themselves. But I would encourage, everybody. The thing about parental alienation, bottom line, it's very complicated. It's also very simple. Once you understand how it operates and the tangible things that you can do, and I'm all about practical actions, your experience is literally transformed. But this is why going and getting help is really beneficial, because the resources, they will deal with narcissism by itself, but they don't really deal with alienation as the thing that the person is doing. There's quite a lot of stuff which is from the kid's perspective, but it doesn't talk about it from the parent's perspective. And then there's lots of well-being stuff, but there's very little well-being material that's actually related directly to the experience of parental alienation. So even where people go to psychiatrists and therapists, they can get some generalist help, but they're not actually getting the help of, why am I feeling grief specifically related to this experience of me missing my child? Yeah. There's only people who've been through that missing your child component and all the other emotions that can relate it back and help you to say, okay, these are the things I need to actually do that are going to help me.
Man, that's terrific, Charlie. We're gonna do some more work around this and do whatever the 2 of us can do to get this out and help more of the dads out there. I sincerely appreciate the blessing that you are in helping all of the dads and sharing with us today. And I look forward to us chatting again soon.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, Jude. I'm so glad to have any chance to help parents to get through this.
Thanks, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Wonderful.
To hear the rest of this episode and access the corresponding resources, visit thedivorcedadvocate.com and become a member of our community. It's free to join and will provide you with the resources you deserve as a divorced or divorcing dad. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll talk with you next week.